Hello and welcome to this month's Q&A. It's currently October 17th, 2023. I'll be responding to questions and topics that have come in from viewers and community members and friends via YouTube, Discord, email. If you want to have me respond to some question or topic, you can. The best way to do that is leave a comment on this video if you're watching on YouTube, or go to the Discord and there's a section there called Questions for Max, and you can leave a question there and I'll respond to it in next month's Q&A. So I hope you're doing very well. I'm doing good today, and we're going to go through a bunch of stuff here. I've got some really interesting questions, and then at the end I'll respond to some of the questions that are more personal in nature, that are regarding myself. These first questions are about music. The other ones are kind of about music too, but involving me. So we're going to start with question number 1 here. Can you talk about the effects of harmony on humans? How harmony, music, or sound relates to life overall beyond music? Damn, this is the question for me. This is something I've really spent an inordinate amount of time considering in my life and reflecting on, and consistently do still to this day. It's just, big for me. At some point, the sense was in studying harmony that I'm studying something that is fundamental to how life works, to how the universe works. And not in the sense of, this chord moves to this chord and voice leading and so on. That's all cool too, and it does relate to this, but more fundamentally about harmony, about how things go together, what consonance is and dissonance is and all of this. I actually have a few quotes that I want to read that are going to do justice to this better than I can do. This first one is from Thomas Carlyle, and the quote is, "See deeply enough and you see musically, the heart of nature being everywhere music, if you can only reach it." Here's some quotes from Inayat Khan, Sufi mystic and musician. Let's see, how about, I got so many of them here, it's just... Yeah. "Music, the word we use in our everyday language, is nothing less than the picture of God. I wish to direct those who search for truth towards the law of music, which is working throughout the whole universe, and which, in other words, may be called the law of life, the sense of proportion, the law of harmony, the law which brings about balance, the law which is hidden behind all aspects of life, which holds this universe intact and works out its destiny throughout the whole universe, fulfilling its purpose. Every person is music, perpetual music, going on day and night. Your intuitive faculty can hear that music, and that is the reason why one person is repellent and the other attracts you so much. It is the music they express. Their whole atmosphere is charged with it. Everyone shows harmony or disharmony according to how open they are to the music of the universe. The more open they are to all that is beautiful and harmonious, the more their life is tuned to that universal harmony, and the more they will show a friendly attitude towards everyone they meet. Their very atmosphere will create music around them." So I think, I've got some other ones here too. I collect quotes on this topic, in case that's not obvious. I'm going to leave it at that for the moment. So for me, of course, there is the study of harmony in terms of Western music theory. There's a more fundamental study of harmony in terms of the harmonic series, how that operates with our hearing and our mind and our interpretation and what we consider to be pleasant or displeasing or consonant or dissonant. And I really do feel that this taps into sort of the heart of nature and how things are working fundamentally. And I have nothing here to tell you that I can prove that to you. It's just a sort of intuitive sense that I have, and perhaps you resonate with that, perhaps you don't. And in one of those quotes, it's mentioned, sort of let's call it a sixth sense. How many senses do you have, really? Lots. And some hidden sense anyway, some sense that is not talked about normally, which is the perception of what Inayat Khan was calling harmony there, the harmony of whatever, a person or a situation or a feeling or this or that, the feeling of togetherness or repellentness that occurs, this sound versus this sound versus this sound, And I think there's a lot to be gained by just sitting with an instrument and slowly and contemplatively exploring, meditatively exploring intervals and relationships and chords and hearing what they do. Every interval and every structure within music, harmonic structure, has a particular quality, particular feeling state. And in exploring those, my sense has been that somehow I'm gaining some kind of insight into what we might call the harmony or disharmony between people and individuals, or any things, seeming things within the universe. And I mean, there's so much to say about this. It probably warrants its own video. I won't go so in depth today. I just want to read these quotes and maybe give some food for thought in terms of perhaps there's more to the study of harmony than just how to make hip chords and, how to do whatever, tritone substitutions and good voice leading and all that. But there's more there. There's something in the potential for instance, hearing two notes that at first, on their own, feel very dissonant, but, maybe when you put them with some others, they start to be friends. There's a lot of that in music. Micro dissonance, which put in a larger context becomes more macro consonance. And I feel like this also happens between humans. Two people that may seemingly not get along too well, put a third person in who's able to harmonize the group, and everything is smooth. These experiences of meeting someone for the first time, and there's just this instant, love this person. Don't know why. We call it vibe. We call it, they got a good vibe. I like the vibe. I like the feeling. I like the whatever it happens to be of this person. We have this sense that is not explicit, that's something subtle. And you can be more or less tuned into the situation of a moment with other people or within nature or within whatever. And this feeling of attraction and repulsion. And this is not something that you generate. This isn't something that you're good at or bad at. It's just a perception of some interaction, just like this is. It's a perception of some kind of interaction. And those interactions are very complex, but opening to them in a way, a conscious way, even though we don't really have so many words to describe them, is pretty interesting anyway, put it that way. And worth exploring, in my experience. There's more to say about this. I have many, many views about related subjects, even branching into the world of science and talking about vibration and the structure of thoughts and emotions and their interrelationship between that with other people and the universe and blah, blah, blah. Whole thing. If that's of interest to someone, you feel free to leave a comment. I can make a video maybe exploring some of those things more. I haven't really done much of that on the channel, but it's a big thing in my life. I'm really into the study of music as far as writing music goes, but I'm also very into the study of music as far as studying life itself goes. And I truly feel that there are, I don't know if I want to call them secrets, but there are principles that are made explicit in music, in the study of music, that are fundamental to the operation of life altogether. And music is a kind of miniature or a replica or a fractal or a something, a made manifest form of these principles that we can study through this perceptual sense we call hearing and feeling. We feel into these intervals and these relationships, and somehow in doing that, in playing the variety of chords that can occur, we get all these different sense feelings. And there's something in that goes beyond just music, for me anyway. Maybe that's just for me. I think other people resonate with it too. Like I say, I collect quotes about this because it's a lifelong study for me. So yeah, if you're interested, please leave a comment, and I'm happy to explore it some more too. All right, second question is, do you have any opinions on non-functional harmony? Of course, I got opinions on everything. So the thing with functional harmony is, what is functional harmony? Functional harmony is where chords, when we're talking about harmony, we're talking about chords, really, in the modern sense anyway. Functional harmony is about chords that have a purpose towards forward motion They are coherent, goal-oriented progressions of chords. They're not just random. They have a goal orientation. They're doing something in particular. Really, this is a conceptual framework. It's not like this is some actual thing called functional harmony. It's a way of thinking about sounds, a way of thinking about how we perceive various musical structures and how to talk about them and how to manipulate them. This is what functional harmony is, and it has a multi-century development time in the West, right, where harmony is big. And the sort of end point of functional harmony, let's say, or one could say, is cadences. And cadence is a musical resolution. When you hear just this, that kind of thing. A musical resolution, this is a cadence, and functional harmony is about this in many ways. It's about the creating or prolonging or delaying of or circumventing of cadences. And all this centers on tonality, tonality being the establishing of a key center, of a harmonic generating tone, a center point, that thing that drives all music for the most part. Okay, it's definitely not all music, but a very large portion of music is tonally based around some key center. And functional harmony is not the only way of dealing with key centers, of course, but it's a way of dealing with key centers in which you are logically moving forward in some way and creating senses of anticipation and resolution. So non-functional harmony simply is harmony, that is chords and chord progressions that don't have this functional quality to them, in which the chords don't have an explicit purpose in a larger forward movement towards some goal. They're not goal-oriented. The chords in non-functional harmony, you could say, are standalone entities. They are, of course, they also have progression. There is one chord to another, and we perceive some relationship between them. And of course, if we've grown up in the West, we're going to have some inbuilt sensibilities towards functional harmony because so much of our music is built upon it, that when it doesn't do that, that's a kind of function in a way, going against the functional thing. That's a whole nother topic. But let's stay on this non-functional harmony. We're looking at a sound, a particular chord, as being its own entity in the moment, as opposed to serving a purpose towards some future moment. So there's a lot of ways to deal with non-functional harmony. It's an understatement. There's many ways that have come about since the time of classical period, and even into the late 1800s and early 1900s, already non-functional harmony was becoming a big thing in terms of the exploration of impressionist composers and beyond, into jazz and modal stuff and whatever. And today, of course, in the modern classical world, in the jazz world, in the film score world, in video game music and whatever, non-functional harmony is everywhere. So non-functional harmony is wonderful. Now, I'm certainly let's say, not biased, I don't know what the word is. I'm somehow disposed towards functional stuff. I love functional movement. I don't know why. I just love the sense of anticipation and surprise that occurs with that. That happens to whatever extent it does in non-functional stuff too, but I love that as well. Non-functional harmony has the potential to do things that functional harmony can't do. Obviously, that's why we even have the distinction. So when you're writing non-functionally, so to speak, you're not having goals in mind with the harmony. You're not having cadential resolution points in mind that you're driving to and delaying. Rather, each chord is treated as a kind of island of sound that we're living in for the moment, and that transitions into a new island of sound, and that new island does not need to be related to the previous one in any traditional sense. It doesn't need to be tonic, subdominant, and dominant relationship. Oh, this must follow that because the leading tone does the thing and the voice leading in this, all of this. It doesn't matter. There's just this sound, there's this sound, there's this sound. We're moving through different possibilities. If I sit down and I play, I don't know, whatever, something like this. See, when I just look at the keyboard and all the functional stuff appears to me because that's what I orient my whole musical world around because I love it so much. I have a whole harmonic vocabulary that's built upon essentially a key center, all 12 other notes either being used as bass notes or being used as melody notes, and all the various chords that can be built from them that have a coherent relationship to the key center and have a coherent relationship to the forward motion of the progression, or the surprise, or the circumventing of that motion, or whatever. It's really big for me. So when I'm looking at something like this C minor 11 thing, all of these other possibilities appear, and generally speaking for me, those are very functional in nature. But it doesn't have to be, I can just hit something like this. Now we're living here. And then maybe we think, I'm essentially going at random at the moment. Except I can't help myself. Every single one that I hear triggers all of these potential movements that feel somehow functional, feel like they're moving forward in some way, because whatever, that's how I've structured my life around studying that kind of thing. So non-functional harmony presents a huge amount of freedom in terms of how to move with chords, but what it loses, in a certain sense, it loses this sense of forward motion. It loses the sense of establishing a logical chain which the listener is sort of pulled into, which then you either reward them or not, and both are pleasurable for the most part. Whereas in the non-functional world, you can string together a chain of chords which don't need to have this goal. They don't even need to stay in the same key. They just drift and drift and drift. And that's wonderful. You can already imagine, just thinking about it, what types of feelings, what types of moods, what types of music you might want to use that for, just in the concept of it, versus what types of feelings and movements and stuff you would use functional stuff for. And an important point is that these are not mutually exclusive. It's not like you're somehow locked into writing functionally. Functional harmony is just an idea, just a concept. You're never actually writing functional harmony other than you're thinking that you are, but it's not like these chords actually exist out there in some realm called the functional realm versus the non-functional realm. You just do whatever. And either you move by the principles that have been developed for functional harmony or not, moving against them. And you can do both at any time you want. So for me, non-functional harmony has this quality of shifting mood and driftingness. When I'm using non-functional harmony, it's to establish some world that is changing its shape, and it's not leading you to something. We're just morphing into different atmospheres, or whatever you want to say. What is this language? Whereas when I'm writing functionally, I'm creating a different kind of drama and tension and suspense and whatever through manipulating the listener's inbuilt tendencies that come both from nature and nurture, culture, through hearing all this functional music, but also the workings of the harmonic series and our hearing and all of this, using that to sort of drag the listener's ear around and then either giving them what they expect or not. And so, for instance, in a functional context, you can establish a key center and you're playing resolutions, and then you suddenly change key, and that key change will have a very strong dramatic effect because of the circumventing of what you've just been doing functionally. Whereas in a non-functional context, and you're just relating your chords either mentally not at all, like just at random, or you're relating them by having, say, a single common tone. You're playing F sharp major, and it's got a C sharp in it, and you're saying, okay, C sharp is my tone now, and I'm just going to play chords that contain that tone. Now I'm playing A major, and it has that thing. Now I'm going to play D flat inverted, and it has that thing. Now I'm going to play E 6, 9, or E major, whatever the hell you want to call this. It's got that tone in it too. Now it's going to be D major 9, sharp 11. For instance, that's one way to go about this. I'm just taking one tone and saying, everything else be damned, so long as the chords contain this one tone, that's it. That's my sort of conceptual map for how I'm going to start thinking about the harmony. In that way, the key changing thing, the surprise of the key change isn't really that much of an option, because every moment so much is shifting, and it's like a continual key change, especially when you linger on these things for a long time, as opposed to like changing through them quickly. Everything that I say right now, everything that I say, it just feels like I could just say the opposite and be like, but there's also, but. And that's the way with music, right? It's just like, what can you really say that is like true, 100%? Kind of nothing. Whatever it seems like is true in this moment, you can immediately find an example where it's like, yeah, but it also kind of works like this, doesn't it, in this context? So yeah, that was about as rambly as I could possibly put that. But there's some rambling thoughts on non-functional harmony. Third question. I don't play keyboards. I keep threatening to learn. Therefore, I get really frustrated at programming in the piano roll. Do you have any tips for programming in the piano roll regardless of keyboard skills? No. Just learn the keyboard. Learn, composer keyboards, basically composer piano, to the point where you can see scales, you can see chords, and you can see the relationships. That's it. There are people that program entirely through drawing in on the piano roll. And I know some people that do that to a ridiculous extent. That doesn't make any sense to me. I would never do that. I will draw in on the piano roll for certain types of things, but to do any kind of realistic or performed sort of music, it doesn't make any sense. You're going to have to put in everything and change every little variable with the velocity changing. Like imagine you wanted to write a real sounding piano part, but you're going to draw it all in. The amount of work that takes, you may as well just learn the basics of how to play. Like I don't play that well at all on the keyboard. What I can do is I can visualize any chord very quickly, I can visualize any scale very quickly, and I can visualize any relationship between melody notes and a given bass note or a chord very quickly. That's about it. I know some basic rhythms, I can play arpeggios and play my scales and so on. I did do some piano practice in my life, but you don't even need to go that far. If you can at least see things and play, even if you can just play your chords very slowly in and your melodies very slowly in, in the end, you're going to save so much time, and you may even find that you enjoy doing it. So I really can't personally recommend sticking with just drawing stuff in. It's just, it's such a specific skill and it's non-transferable. If you find yourself in front of a keyboard anywhere else in life, the piano roll skill is not going to help you no matter how good you are at it. So if a DAW situation ever changes to not use piano rolls, that skill is now useless again. It's very, very specific. Not to say you shouldn't have that skill. I have that skill to whatever degree too, but I do feel like time is just better spent learning the basics. It's not that difficult, honestly. Like the keyboard's laid out pretty logically, and if you just spend a little bit of time each day, the results are 100% worth it. If you're someone that is writing music on the computer, unless the music you're writing is all very beat-based, electronic-based, I'm into all those things, that sort of thing, okay, sure, you're not really writing a lot of performed parts and complex stuff. Yeah, you can get away with it. But anything else, it just seems to me like you may as well do it. It's not only going to be good for your composing, it's going to be good for your musicianship overall, your skill transferability. You're going to learn things about your other instruments just by studying the keyboard that you wouldn't know in any other way because of how it's structured and how you visualize and all that. Just learn it. Question 4. This is a bit of a long one, but I want to read the whole thing because there's some nuance here that I think maybe certain people will resonate with. What about repertoire through sheet music? I really love playing piano repertoire from various periods of music, but also want to compose a lot and improve my skills in that realm. But sadly, as many others, I don't have many time in my normal days, maybe 1 hour, maximum 2 hours. I found that in order to compose with ease and freely, it's nice to have a good foundation in theory, oral skills, knowledge of your software, a nice understanding of your instrument, ideally the piano, and ideally practice a lot of improvisation and transcribing. The thing is, in that set of skills, I don't necessarily see the importance of reading sheet music, which is especially true with the emergence of DAWs and the facility to write using the piano roll or recording yourself, unlike the old method of writing using sheet music. In the end, time is limited, and it's impossible to dedicate time to all of that. How do others approach this? Maybe practice a bit of various things in one day during a period of time, or maybe dedicate more time to one or two of them and then the other. This concerns me because when I dedicate time to learn sheet music, I also dedicate a lot of time to improve my reading skills using apps and doing exercises, but maybe that's not the most conducive way to develop skills to compose well and with ease. All right, so I think this is pretty common for a lot of people to consider, especially if you've already learned to read and spent time in doing that. So just for some background, I do know how to read and did that early in life. I'm very slow at reading these days, but I can read both clefs and can play slowly on the piano and can do it on guitar and all this. But outside of that, I don't do any reading at all in my life, and I don't really write using standard notation, except when I have to for some reason. If I have to provide a part to another musician, or I'm notating a particular score that I want so that I always have it in the future, I might do it that way, and I have the skill to do that, but outside of that, I don't. The one thing that I do use that skill for is analysis, because so much music has been notated, of course, already in standard notation, that if you don't read at all, yeah, you can, of course, use your ears. If you have good ears, you can pick out anything, and that's all great. But if you do read, even to a small extent, at least piano music, then a huge amount of material is available to you to study in very short order. You don't have to spend an hour transcribing a very complex piece, orchestral, piano piece, whatever. You can just look at a score and say, oh, that's that, and that's that, and that's that, and here's the principle, and now I got it, I'm gonna go use it, right? So for me, there's a huge benefit there. And I think this is where it's important to touch on the fact that everyone is so unique that it's very hard to say anything universal about this. If you're someone that, as you write here, I really love playing piano repertoire from various periods of music, then you do. And the way to do that is by reading. And the point of doing music personally is the enjoyment of the doing it. So if that's something you enjoy doing, you're not going to stop doing that. It doesn't make any sense to stop doing that, because you would be removing the thing that you're enjoying. So you're just going to do that. And that's going to impact the other things in your life to whatever degree that it is, and there's no way around that. Like you say, time is short, and what are you going to do? Personally, I look at some people, I go on YouTube and I see players and whatever, various instruments, and I just am so blown away by their abilities on their instruments. And I think, damn, I really wish I had spent more time in my life. Didn't I spend more time in my life? Why am I not as good at blah, 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 blah? And then I think, right, I did spend a lot of time on my instruments, but I also spent a huge amount of time in the DAW, making beats, making all these different styles that I love to make, learning to mix, learning to make synth sounds, learning to program, all this, like I did all that. I also hung out with my friends and watched movies and played video games and, all that too, right? So yeah, I'm not as good a player as a lot of these people, but these people aren't as good in the DAW as I am, and maybe they don't have as many friends as I do. Kidding. But you see what I mean? There's no way to do it all, and everyone is going to be so unique that I can't really recommend to anyone that, no, you shouldn't spend time doing that. If you're doing that just because you think it's good to do, okay, maybe if your desire to compose is greater than your desire to play in this particular style, then okay, maybe you can cut back on that a bit. For me, I would say you're right, that because of the situation with DAWs today, you don't need reading skills and you don't need to practice them. So many people have no ability to read music and write amazing music on the computer all the time. I don't use any of my reading and writing skills at all when I'm writing music, and I constantly am writing music in all these different styles. And for me, I would say it's pretty obvious in my own experience that the time actually spent composing and getting my hands dirty in the DAW, just trying stuff, has been so much more beneficial for my actual ability to compose than learning to read. And I absolutely would not trade that time at all. I would 100% have rather spent that time just composing and writing in the DAW than I would have spent trying to read and play my instrument better. But that's just me. That's because for me, what I love most about doing in music is composing. I love that above all else. I love to just sit with my instrument and try things for hours and hours, listening to possibilities and exploring and saying, oh, there's this, but there's this, and there's this. Oh, but what about blah, blah, blah? You know, that sort of thing, it trumps everything for me. And the DAW allows me to do that, not just for one instrument, but for any instrument and for any combination of them in any style. So this is the ultimate for me, which is why I am how I am. It's why I spend my time doing this, because it combines everything that I love at once about music, about the doing of music, basically. I can play my instrument into it, but I can also draw in stuff. I can also use all the theory knowledge. I can arrange and orchestrate. You know, I love that. And for every moment that I spend doing that, that's a moment spent not running scales on my instrument. That's a moment spent not reading sheet music and practicing that. It's a moment spent not learning a new instrument as much as I'd like to. So yeah, I just have to choose that. And I have to understand that there's no way around the fact that there's not enough time to do everything. And you're going to get such an infinite diversity of individuals with these unique skill sets, and you will be one of them with your ability to read at the level that you do. That's not going to be inconsequential to your composing. You know, every piece that you read, especially if you have a compositional mindset, when you're playing other people's music through reading, you are ingesting music in a whole new way that's not just listening, right? You're seeing the notes, you're feeling, you're understand. If you're analyzing what you're doing, you're understanding how it relates to the key center and blah, 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 blah. There's so much benefit, compositional benefit to be gained through doing that. But it's also possible to just read and play and perform in a way in which you're not perhaps consciously intaking the types of information that lead to composing in a better way. I mean, it's probably pretty obvious that there's a huge amount of people out there that read at a very high level, but don't really compose at all or really know how to compose in any coherent way, despite having played incredible compositions from all sorts of composers throughout history. So they don't necessarily go hand in hand, but they can. And that just is up to you and up to your disposition and what makes sense to you. In the end, there's no right or wrong way to do it. So if you are really into playing and into composing, you will just have to split your time between the two and hopefully find some middle ground in which when you're doing one, you're somehow also kind of doing the other. You know, that's a possibility to whatever extent. And for others, like myself, it's heavily shifted, you know, in this conceptual case towards one side, composing, and others will be heavily shifted towards reading and playing and not towards composing at all. So sorry if that isn't like some particular recommendation. How should you go about it? I don't know how you should go about it, really. You know, that's the mystery of all this, and you find out as you go. You just kind of flail towards some kind of goal that interests you and get sidetracked and have fun and explore and wish you had done that and regret it and then realize, oh, but if I had done that, blah, 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 blah. You know, it's just this messy, sometimes confusing, sometimes clear, you know, just pushing in every direction that interests you thing, right? That's how we learn this. And in the end, it's going to end up making you the kind of musician that it makes you, and that will be entirely unique, and that's perfect. There's no need to worry about that. Whatever you end up being and whatever you end up writing, it's great. For me anyway, it's great. Question 5. Do you have a specific exercise on hand synchronization for guitar players? I'm a lefty, but play right-handed instruments. Chords, arpeggios, etc. are really easy to learn, but things fall apart at certain speeds because my picking hand cannot keep up. All right, so a bit similar to the last question, the uniqueness of every individual, both in terms of your body, in terms of your mind, in terms of your upbringing, and in terms of your physical situation, like you're saying, left-handed person, but playing right-handed instrument, is going to combine in some unique way where part of your journey is understanding what makes sense to you both mentally and physically, what is working and what's not working. Sometimes you'll want to really fight against things that are not working and try to make them work. And other times you're going to want to just go with the flow and say, you know what, this sort of kind of picking, for instance, as a guitar player, say like, you know, really fast alternate picking, accurate alternate picking, is not really working for me so well, and maybe there's another avenue that I can pursue that is really working for me. And if I focus on what's working and develop that, I might even come to a whole new unique way of playing. I think Tom Coyle, a friend of mine, fusion guitar player, a friend slash massive inspiration of mine, is a good example of that. Someone that has developed an incredibly dexterous left hand, an amazing legato technique that is like second to none, really, and doesn't alternate pick a lot, but made the decision at some point that the alternate picking wasn't really happening for him, and he loved the legato sound, and he seemed to be really good at it, and maybe let's focus on that. And there came a sort of whole career based off of this. For myself on guitar, I really like alternate picking, and I'm quite good at it. Even though I don't play that much anymore in that way, I still can do it pretty well, very accurately and very fast, because I spent a lot of time doing it. And somehow it always just worked for me. My legato isn't great. It's honestly pretty weak. And so I kind of do it, but I also say like, yeah, I could play it like this, but if I play it like this, I can really do it. So there's a bit of a fine line to walk there, right? Which is just giving up at anything that's hard and just sticking with what's easy. That doesn't really make sense. But also having to feel into like what actually works for my whole organism, what's pushing against the grain too much, and is it really worth the time to push in that regard? Or can I better focus my efforts on something else that will bring about a different result? Maybe you don't end up playing like your inspirations, because your inspirations happen to have the type of body and mind that does work very well for a particular type of playing. And that might mean that, let's take alternate picking for an example. Alternate picking might have been very difficult for them at one point, but they might have had the type of mind which takes that difficulty and enjoys the challenge and is strongly motivated to work on it endlessly until they get it. Now, even if that's you, even if you're someone that finds it challenging and has really strong motivation, there's no guarantee that you're actually going to be able to do it. Many people want to do certain things and then try to do it and realize, I'm not actually great at math despite me wanting to be a physicist. It's just not happening. Or I wanted to be a soccer player, but my coordination of my body, no matter what I do, is simply not at the level of these other people who are doing it. And I kind of have to abandon the goal of being world class in that, and maybe I focus on something else that's related or whatever. And I can't say what that is, obviously, for anybody. I have a hard time even saying what it is for myself until something comes, until I'm doing something and some insight comes to me one day and says, hey, you know what? This isn't really working. And I can actually feel it. I can feel this isn't working. I'm kind of like swimming upstream right now. Maybe swimming upstream is fun to a certain extent, but it's also pretty cool to swim downstream. In fact, you don't even have to swim downstream. You just kind of chill. So I found that certain things on the guitar really worked well for me. Literally certain fingerings, I have a hard time moving between certain fingers where other fingers work really well. I have a really easy time doing massive weird stretches on chords, but certain motions that appear in, a particular kind of sweep picking or particular arpeggio patterns are very difficult for me. And so I end up saying, yeah, okay, that's for somebody else to be a master at. And I'm going to go do this thing because A, it's easier, and B, it's fun because I'm good at it, basically. So it's kind of working to your strengths as opposed to trying to make yourself into your inspiration, trying to make yourself into somebody else. You say, what am I naturally, and how do I best grow that? How do I best develop what's already here? So your question was, do I have a specific exercise for hand synchronization? Yeah, sure, but it's no different really than anyone else's. It's a matter of sensitivity towards the minute details and intricacies of doing it. Like when I was working on getting synchronization going on, it's what you'd expect, it's very, very slow, perfect movement. And speeding slowly, and at the instant at which that's not happening anymore, coming back slow again, and slow again, and slow again. This might take months, this might take years to do. And depending on your motivation towards it, you're either going to have enough motivation to pursue that or not. I did until a certain point, and then I didn't anymore, and I stopped. And I have no regret about that. So that's for you to know and to discover. So as far as specific exercises go, yeah, I mean, it's just playing scales and arpeggios and solos and all this, but paying very, very close attention and being perfect with it. That was always my way of doing it. Paying attention to every little detail, not letting anything slip by and say, yeah, I kind of just want to play fast though, even though it's not that good, it's kind of sloppy. A lot of it is about listening intently and saying, but does it actually sound good? Can I actually do it correctly to the point where it's producing a pleasing sound? If not, kind of don't do it. Slow down and work on it. And if you do that a lot and it's still not happening, perhaps there's another avenue to explore instead of beating your head against a wall trying to make yourself something you're not. Question 6. This is about borrowed chords. This is a discussion that came up in the Discord, talking about modal interchange and borrowing chords from parallel keys and all this. And it just kind of got me thinking about the terminology and the issues, the pros and cons of borrowed, the terminology borrowed, because you do hear that a lot. The idea being that if you're playing in C major, you can borrow chords from C minor or C Dorian or C Phrygian or whatever, or borrow chords from B major or B Dorian. You borrow whatever you want. And that's the point. You're not actually really borrowing anything. The borrowing is just a conceptual framework for how to think about something. A lot of times in music, as in anything, certain sounds and possibilities are inaccessible to us until we have a conceptual framework in which to access those ideas. Like certain sounds, the vast majority of people are simply not going to come across by random chance exploring. For people that, for instance, don't have any theoretical study underneath what they're doing, they're going to be doing things that probably are in alignment with certain theory concepts and things that aren't. But there's going to be a huge collection of possibilities that they most likely will never explore or encounter in their life, because really to access those, they're often very specific. These possibilities are very specific and require a sort of a mental inroad to even access them. Oftentimes these things are like, not just, one particular chord, but it's, say, a chain of chords or a way of key changing or whatever that you don't really stumble across. These are things that you kind of have to think through and know what you're doing. That's fun for some people and not for others, of course. And this concept of borrowing chords, a huge amount of classic rock and classic pop music is made of modal interchange, you could say, the borrowing of chords from parallel keys. But it's not like the people who were doing that, for the most part, were thinking of that at all in that way. My experience of that is that particular chords are very easy to play on a guitar, and particular chords are easy to play on a piano. And the people writing these songs simply played the chords that they knew in various orders until they found things they liked. It just so happened to be that you could look at those as being modal interchange. Like on a guitar, there's a bunch of chords that are easy to play, like E major, A major, G, C, D, F, and all that looks a lot like you're in the key of E major with a bunch of modal interchange, but it also kind of looks like here's all the easy chords on the guitar, just put in the orders that I know that I came up with, basically. Same on the piano. So the borrowing thing is a conceptual framework. It's a way of helping someone who has already learned theory to some extent and knows about keys and chords and the diatonic chords of a key and so on. Then we say, oh, did you know you can borrow chords from other keys? And that sort of makes a whole new realm accessible to them in a conscious way as opposed to a accidental way. And when you access them in a conscious way, it means you can repeat it in all different keys. When you access it in an accidental way, stumbling into it, so to speak, you may find that in a certain key, you can do this and you can do this and it sounds cool, but you don't really know what it is or how to conceptualize it. You don't know how to do it in any other key. Whereas when you have this concept of borrowing, suddenly you feel like, oh, I can borrow chords wherever I am. The trap here is that there is no borrowing happening, of course. All of this is just made up. It's just all of these scales and modes and keys and chords and all. It's a bunch of ideas that we use to help us explore possibilities in music, but these ideas don't refer to actual objective things. So when you're borrowing a chord, you aren't actually borrowing anything from one thing to another. It doesn't make any sense. Even the notion of a chord isn't actually some objective thing out there. It's just an idea. Like even when we play one note, anyone who's studied the harmonic series would know that this one note sounds the way it does because it's basically what we would call a chord. It's a series of pure harmonics, pure sine waves that sum together at certain volume relationships to produce this timbre. And so, am I playing a chord? Yeah, but also no. So, when I play a real chord like this or this, it's the same. Calling it a chord is just a mental grasping. It's a mental way of conceptualizing what is actually some just unbelievably mysterious happening that we call sound and music, and trying to make sense of it in a way that we can manipulate it. But these terms aren't really referring to actual things. So that's what I want to say about borrowing. Borrowing is useful insofar as it gives you an inroad into possibilities that perhaps you weren't aware of before, and allows you to repeat certain kinds of sounds in different keys in different contexts. But don't get caught up in the terminology, because you're not really borrowing. When you're in the key of E minor, but you play a chord from E major, you're not borrowing that chord from E major. There's just this sound and there's that sound. There's nothing there that's being borrowed, because there's not actually anything objectively out there from which that you're currently in and another one that you're taking from, right? It's just a mental thing. And that's all cool. I'm not saying don't have the mental thing. Do have the mental thing. It lets you do certain practical things very well. But it's also can be confusing, especially when you get more deep into the study of music and you're really trying to understand what's going on here as far as how music works and how to manipulate it. If you get hung up on the terminology and feel like you're really discovering certain actual objective things about music, you might get confused, and I know I have many times. So I just want to maybe caution a little bit there, that the borrowing as well as many, many, in fact, basically all other terms, even note and chord and a rhythm and all of that, these aren't actual objectively existent structures or entities. They're mental concepts that help us grasp, we're not even grasping anything. They help us think we're grasping music and manipulate it in particular ways. Question 7. I'm trying to create a track that gives off a spy thriller vibe. Everything in my mind says chromatics are the way, but I was wondering if you have any recommendations on creating chord progressions that include repeating chromatic movements. Do you feel that there are certain chord structures that lend to this type of movement? Yeah, so this is obviously a big topic, particular chromatic repeating movements, spy thriller vibe. Okay, so the spy thriller vibe, is traditionally this James Bond sort of, I should probably play a different voicing. There's a minor chord in which the fifth is chromatically raising and lowering. There's other ones, there's the root lowering and so on. There's a bunch of these what people call line cliches. I hate that term, but that's what people call them. And that spy vibe is the one in question right now. So in relation to this question, I want to give a really interesting example here, which is that in the old school James Bond movies, they're using this minor chord with the ascending fifth sort of vibe and various variations on it. And then in some of the more recent theme songs for James Bond movies, they have used this progression. And what's cool here is that this progression is still doing that. Oops. You see? That note is still doing it, but now with the roots moving and the other notes in the chord sometimes changing, this is C minor, A flat major, F minor, the same chromatic inner line or upper line or wherever you decide to put it is still happening, but it's been recontextualized where the chords are now, those notes are still part of the chords, but instead of being a static minor chord, the chords are changing, but the chords are changing in a way that allows that chromatic line to move. This is the point I want to get to with this question, which is that any interesting anything that you find in music, but particularly these things that are little melodic changes, either within a chord progression or just in a melody or anything, there's ways of taking that idea and recontextualizing it so that you still get roughly the same effect with a slightly new quality to it. And if you can identify what the operative mechanism is, in this case, the operative mechanism is we're in a minor key, the fifth is raising, 5, flat 6, natural 6, flat 6, 5. If you can get that clear, and then you start to say, okay, so how else can we do this? For instance, another idea would be, what if that movement was the bass instead of an inner line or an upper line? That's different than the two we had here. It's a static minor chord with the thing changing. Here, it's I can't think right now. Here it's chords changing, but that line cliche is just the inner notes of the chords in a sense. But what if we took these and said, can we find a way to make a chord progression still in that key, but these are bass notes, or those are melody notes, or whatever, right? There's lots of ways to go about that. So that becomes a whole exploration in itself. And you say, okay, here's this fifth of the key. Do we make it at first, sorry. Do we make it a second inversion minor chord? My guess would be no. Do we make it a 5 chord? And then that goes to a 6 chord, flat 6 chord. That goes to a 4 major. And then that goes to a 2 minor 7 flat 5. What did I just say? This is, now you can hear the same sort of sound is occurring, but now the first chord is totally different. We have this, to this, to this, to this, or this, or this. So long as this is still happening in one of the voices, it's going to give you that feeling. So when you identify these chromatic movements within chord progressions or whatever, it's really useful to abstract them, which always means convert specific notes into numbers. So instead of G, A flat, and A, it's 5, flat 6, and 6. And then say, okay, how do I use that same movement but put it somewhere else? What if it's inner lines? What if it's the melody? What if it's the bass? What if it's moving between them? What if the first chord has it in the bass, the second chord has it in the melody, and the third chord has it in the middle, and blah, blah, blah. You look at all the different harmonic possibilities within a key that contain the operative note that you're looking for, and you start exploring possibilities. If you're looking for chords that contain this middle note, you start saying, okay, I'm in the key of C minor. Which chords naturally contain A flat? Well, not the 1 chord, it doesn't, but the 2 chord does. The flat 3 chord doesn't, unless it's suspended, then it does, or it's, an add 11, then it does. The 4 chord does. The 5 chord doesn't, unless it's a flat 9, then it does. But then we're also got the G in the chord, and that kind of defeats the purpose because we just heard the G and we're trying to get away from it. The 6 chord does. The flat 7th chord doesn't, but unless you make it dominant, then it does, right? So this is sort of the process. You start looking at all the chords in the key, you're looking at your operative note, the chromatic note in question, and saying, how does the chromatic note slot in to all the diatonic chords of the key? Or how does it slot into even the borrowed chords, the non-diatonic chords in the key? Then all sorts of possibilities start to open up, and you'll find progressions that achieve the same intended effect from a new perspective, just like this does, right? They're different, obviously. They give different feelings, but there's somehow variations on a theme. They're tied together, and they're tied together because of this chromatic movement, obviously. So that's really what I got to say about that. And I think that this SPY idea is a pretty interesting kind of place to start looking at this, because it's such a famous movement. I mean, you can't even really do this anymore. You know, if you do that, what do you think? You know, if you've been around movies at all, like anybody who's seen them is going to say, well, that just sounds like James Bond, you know. Anyway, that's what I got to say about that. Question number 8. I want to learn music theory because I'm interested to learn and I feel it will be beneficial in order to make good quality music. My question is, do I need to learn everything about music theory first before I can adequately make music? I've started making some beats in Ableton and they sound decent to me. However, someone else that listens to it may notice many imperfections. Do I have to learn everything about music theory in order to make adequate music? I don't even know how to learn everything about music theory. I certainly have not learned everything about music theory. I don't think anybody has learned everything about music theory. So no, obviously you don't have to do that. And so many people, I'm flabbergasted at the amount of people. So many people make music with no theory knowledge. That's important to understand. Like, I mean, no explicit theory knowledge. They will have their own internal, even instinctive theoretical sense by which they're listening and doing things and so on. Little patterns they find and they memorize and whatever. But no, you definitely don't need to learn music theory before you can make good quality music. Now, that comes with an asterisk, a caveat, which is it really depends on who you are, as I always repeat, because for some people, they will never need to learn any explicit academic music theory and they'll make great music their whole life. Other people might make shit music as far as the majority of people are concerned in terms of what the majority of people would say about it until they learn some theory. You know, perhaps their intuitive, instinctive musical sensibility is not as strong as someone else. I addressed this a little bit in the previous Q&A. Just naturally, through nature, through whatever circumstances of their birth and their family and whatever, genetics and so on that they have, a person may instinctively just go bang, here's just bangers endlessly, I don't even have to try. Another person may struggle to make anything worth listening to, and it's theory that really helps them. And I don't know where that is for you. So that's just something you're going to have to find out. If you're motivated and interested to learn music theory, then of course, learn it. Like, why not? And I love it. I've spent a huge portion of my life doing it because while I have some degree of intuitive musical sensibility, I also am a kind of person that really thrives off of these conceptual frameworks and systems, which for me is a process of ingesting, integrating, transcending. So I need to learn a structure, practice the structure a bit in a rigid fashion to really be like, I am doing this right. And then say, oh, but now I can do it wrong in a good way and not in a random way. So I learn, I integrate, and then I transcend, generally speaking, with any theory. Perhaps that's you, perhaps it's not. Some people just learn and regurgitate, and their music sounds theoretical. There's a lot of that. Other people, their music doesn't sound theoretical at all. It sounds like someone that doesn't learn theory, and not in a bad way. It sounds like this organic flowingness. Other people, their music sounds like someone that didn't learn theory in a bad way, as far as my own sensibility is concerned. It sounds like someone that doesn't have a great intuitive sensibility and doesn't have any theory and is just doing stuff. And the music sounds like some stuff at best sometimes, or it sounds like some shit at worst. That also happens. So there's a huge variety of ways to go about this. The answer to the question is no, you don't have to learn all music theory first. I am always of the opinion, just start. Just get your hands dirty and try. That phrase, the master has failed more times than the student has even tried, is entirely at play here. Just keep doing stuff, doing it, and learning theory along the way. In your doing, in your failing, in your succeeding, there will be a kind of instinctive theory that is gained of your own. And that theory will perhaps match with the academic theory you learn. Perhaps it will conflict. Perhaps it will be augmented by, who knows? There's so many possibilities. So enjoy the process. If you're someone that likes theory, that's great. If you're someone that doesn't like theory, that's also great. Doesn't matter. Maybe tomorrow you will. And if you're someone that likes it today, maybe tomorrow you'll hate it. Maybe you'll feel bound by it. Some people end up feeling bound by and confined by theory. I certainly don't. But, that's just my natural way of being at this moment. Perhaps tomorrow I will. And I'll just say, fuck it all. I'm just going to write whatever. I'm going to try to completely forget all theoretical knowledge and write completely organically for the rest of my life. I have no idea. That might take me over tomorrow, and that'll be cool. I'll be down with that if that's what happens. For now, that's not what's happening, and I'm down with that too. So just be easy with it, And if someone else notices imperfections in your music, and they will, it doesn't matter how good your music is. There's going to be people who are going to listen to it and be like, no, you did this wrong, blah, 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 whatever, If you like the music at this moment, that's all you can ask for, because what else can you do other than have someone else tell you, yeah, it's good, but if it doesn't sound good to you, then what are you doing? Doesn't make any sense. Now, you might make some music that in 2 days or 6 months or 6 years, you're going to listen back to and be like, damn, what was I doing? I obviously had no clue what I was doing. I certainly have a number of things I listened to that I did in the past where I think that. But by and large, I still listen back to my old music and feel like I like it, or there was potential, or whatever, In the moment, that was the best that I could do, and I'm fine with that. Right now, I make the music to the best of my ability. 10 years from now, I'm probably going to look back at what I do today and think, what were you doing? You had no idea, maybe. Or maybe I'll descend into complete shit in 10 years, and I'll look back at what I'm doing now and think, those were the golden days. I can't figure it out anymore. I don't know. It's just bizarre how this whole thing twists and turns. So enjoy the process, be easy with it, learn theory when you want to, explore without it when you want to. The journey, the path, life itself will show you what to do. And so long as you follow that, or don't, it will be something. Question 9. So this came on as a comment on a video. I think on my ear training video, one of my ear training videos. I played a chord progression that went apparently F, C, F, C, A minor, G. So the idea is that this is in the key of C. So it's 4, 1, 6, 5. And the person said, I feel like G is the tonic, not C. So let's just do this together. We're just going to listen here for a second, and I'm going to play them slowly, and you just ask yourself, what does it feel like to you? It doesn't have to be G or C. It could be A, it could be F, and that's what we're going to explore. So I'm just going to play these chords a little bit, and let's just listen to feel which chord feels most like home, most resolved. Say them as I go. F, C, A minor, G. So for this person, they felt like G is the resolution point. For me, it doesn't. Here's F, C. To me, this feels like it's done. But I could also tilt my head And here, A minor is being the resolution, right? A minor is, of course, the relative minor of C, and it has a very strong quality of resolution for factors I'm not going to go into now. What does it feel like to you? What if I end on the F instead? It's the first chord after all. Yeah. So this is getting to a point about tonality and, tonality, tonic, right? We were talking about earlier key centers and the whole deal of functional harmony and all this. So the question is about which chord feels like home and how come I feel like C feels like home. This person at that moment anyway feels like G or felt like G feels like home. Maybe you feel like A or F. This is the way it goes in music, The fact is, it's not objective, it's subjective, and you can't get around that. Honestly, in the morning you might feel like A minor feels like the tonic, and later you feel like C. Sometimes you might even feel like, after hearing it twice, the sense of the tonic shifts. It may even shift mid-progression from one to the other. There's no right or wrong way to feel it because you don't have a choice in how it feels. It just feels like what it feels like, and that's all there is to it. When you're feeling like it's G, even though the teacher says that it's C, then it feels like it's G. That's it. We would say, oh, so it feels like it's in a G mixolydian mode to that person, and there you go. That's fine. If you feel like a piece is in something and someone else feels like it's in something, it's not really something to debate. Perhaps you can help a person feel it differently. I can help you maybe feel like it is C. I can maybe influence your feeling in a certain way by emphasizing the chord and opening my eyes wide and pointing you towards it and repeating it, whatever, as a means of trying to convince you. But it's a bit like, arguing over opinions on a movie or something, right? I mean, people do this endlessly as if there's some kind of true subjective opinion, a true opinion about something that is entirely subjective. Is a movie good? The only way to know is watch it and did you like it? Some people will, some people won't. Neither is wrong or right. There's no way to be wrong or right about it because it's not an objective thing. It's not an objective thing. The question is this 440 hertz? Okay, that's an objective thing. You can measure it and say, yeah, sure, that's not an opinion, I don't think. But in case of tonality, it still is subjective, even though all the theory in the world can tell you, but look, it's all these notes and they're played at this harmonic rhythm and there's this and there's this and the melody does this and blah, blah. It has to be in the key of C. If it doesn't feel like it's in the key, it doesn't feel like it's in the key, and there's nothing to do about that until you wake up tomorrow and suddenly it does feel like it's in the key and there's nothing to do about that. And it doesn't need to feel any particular way, What does it matter? It doesn't really matter. So it gets to the heart of this whole thing with music theory, which is we're dealing with this entirely subjective, mysterious art form, so to speak, of these flowing feelings that we put names to. And, how can you really say something objectively true about it? Because as you grow and as you listen more and more deeply and more gain experience, stuff literally sounds different. Like I hear chords now that I used to hear when I was younger, and I would think, damn, I hate that. And now I hear it and I think this is the best, and vice versa. What happened? The chord didn't change, the chord, going back to our talk about, these things supposedly objectively existing, didn't change. Yet I feel it differently, Certain songs, when you're feeling happy, feel a certain way, and then you're in heartbreak, feel a different way, What can you do about that? There's nothing to do about it. It just feels like that. So there's a degree, I think, of I don't want to call it maturity. There's a degree of openness towards the whole thing that you lose some rigidity when you're serious about it, I hope, or not. Maybe that's better. Who cares? I lose some rigidity, like we do when we're a teenager and you're trying to build an identity and this is the good music and that's the bad music. And if you listen to that bad music, it's because you're an idiot, basically. And only geniuses like me listen to this music. And then like 2 years later, you literally think the complete opposite. Like that music, I was an idiot thinking I was a genius. And all these people, they were geniuses who saw the light. And now I see the light too. And 2 years later, it's completely different. So much of this goes on not with music, not just with music, but literally everything in society. I mean, it's a pretty fundamental human blind spot for a lot of us. And this blind spot is ever shifting. And of course, because things feel like they feel to us, they feel like they feel, and that feels true to us. And only in reflecting that at some point it felt different, do we start to get some insight into the fact that our own sense of what feels right or true does shift over time. And in seeing that, perhaps we understand that, this feeling that I have towards it now, this is actually temporary. This is probably going to shift like it did before. And that goes even for things like tonality, and how particular pieces feel and how particular chords feel and whatever else. So I only brought this up because it's interesting philosophically how this, to explore this, but it does play into how one approaches music overall, interacts with other people when you're talking about music, and also how you compose music, because the more free and sort of, the less rigid you are towards the whole thing, the more possibilities open and the more potential for manipulation and play and pushing and pulling and exploring and experimenting, that all opens the more that you can say, yeah, there is all this theory. And I mean, look at me, someone who's spent my whole life in it. I teach courses on it. I'm obsessed with it. Yet it's kind of like whatever at the same time. Maybe just throw it all away and that's cool too, Doesn't really matter in the end. Whatever you want to do, and if it makes good music, it makes good music. And if that music is good today and good tomorrow, then it's good today and bad tomorrow, then it is to you on that day, right? It's just bizarre. The whole thing is totally bizarre and totally free-flowing and weird. And the more we try to structure it, the more we get into these weird binds of saying, but it must, why, but he likes and I like and I don't, and what should I do, and what's the good music, and did I do it wrong, and how should I, blah, 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 blah. It's just this free-form play. The whole thing is this free-form play of just explore, follow what makes sense, that's going to change, follow that's going to change, let it go, explore, try, do, feel, whatever, Question 10. You are a 00 agent. Got the spy thing going on. You're a 00 agent whose mission it is to bring a student to their highest possible level of instrument playing in 1 year. You've never met the student. You have very little further information. The mission is of utmost importance and priority to you. How do you do it? So the question here is about if there's a student that wants to progress as far as they possibly can within a year time frame. I'm allowed to teach them, let's say, once a week on some instrument. We'll say it's the guitar for now. It could be whatever. How would I go about designing a curriculum or helping this person get as far as they can on the instrument in 1 year? Obviously, this is really of interest to a lot of people, especially people that have a sort of technical efficiency mindset, right? That want to make sure, time is limited in life. We don't want to waste time. We want to get there as quickly as possible, so on, so on. And of course, there's a lot of me in that as well. So how to do that then, without really knowing who the student was or what would be the advice? Well, ahead of time, nothing. I can't do anything. If I've not met this person, I know nothing of them, it basically doesn't matter. The only thing that I can plan is to be open to seeing what they are like in that moment. And what's required for each person will be so radically different for the most part that I'd be wasting my time to try and anticipate some particular way of doing it. Of course, if you're trying to write the ultimate book on how to learn guitar in 1 year for dummies or whatever, yeah, you've got to generalize and set a certain thing. But in this case of I'm actually able to be with the student in a one-on-one basis, that's not really necessary because, at least from my way of teaching, everything comes from the nature of the person at that time, and that will shift over time. And there has to be a constant feeling into, adapting, giving feedback loop. This constant openness to the way the student is, to their aptitude, to their natural abilities, to their physical limitations, to their goals, to their inspirations, to their moods, to their family situation. Not that I need to know that, but to how that plays into their way of being. Because the number one thing that I could do as a teacher would be to stoke or start a fire in the student. When the fire, the passion, that means, when the fire, when the passion, when the desire in a student is burning strong, that's it, basically. It just goes. When I was learning guitar back in the day, when I was 13, when I started, I didn't need any prodding, that's for sure. I was there every day, all day. Wake up early before school, play. Get home, play. Before sleep, play. Repeat. Go to my teacher. He'd give me some stuff to practice. I'd do it a couple times and be like, nah, screw it. I'm just going to do my own thing. Come to him the next week, show him all the stuff I worked on. He'd give me something new, play it like once or twice, screw it. Come back and do it again. That's how it went. Because the fire in me, for whatever reason, it was, not my doing. I didn't create that fire, so to speak. It just started burning, was so strong, I couldn't help it. I just have to do it. I'm compelled, utterly compelled to do it in a way in which it's enjoyable to do. I want it. I want it so bad. I'm just going to do it all the time. And for my type of disposition, I was the type of person that was interested to hear what my teacher would say. And then at the same time, I would be fine with just kind of throwing that away and also just doing my own thing all week. And maybe that fluctuates week to week. Sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. Other people perhaps would not be that way, and they would follow instructions to the letter. And they want to know the most efficient, give me all the techniques, no pitfalls, blah, 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 sort of thing. So to the point of this question, how would you get the person to get as far as possible in 1 year? The number one thing is stoke the fire within the student. How to do that? It depends on the student, obviously. Is it even possible for the student to have a fire burn that strong? Don't know yet. And there's no way to know. Even when I first meet a person, I might have some intuitive sense like, they appear to have the potential to have a strong fire burning in them, let's say. And maybe I can figure that out. Or it might seem like they don't have the potential, but then it turns out they do. And I didn't know. I can't say that. And so that's why this constant feedback loop of attentiveness, giving, receiving has to be happening. And so my goal with the student is to either start the fire or fan the flames as much as possible, because their time with me during a week is very short, right? Even if it's a 2-hour lesson, it's very short compared to the whole week. Their time by themselves practicing is very long, and that's the important part, is when they're by themselves. So the fire needs to be burning sufficiently strong so that when they're by themselves, either they're doing what I've asked them to or suggested or not, but they're doing the instrument. They're doing it obsessively, or it has to be obsessively, but to whatever degree the fire is burning, that's what, how much they're going to do it. So if I want the student, or they want, or we both want them to progress as fast as possible, how do you get the fire to burn as strong as possible? And for each person, that's going to be different. That could involve things like listening to music together, like a kind of music appreciation, listening and gushing about, talking about, getting stoked on real music and being like, isn't this awesome? Oh, this is so awesome. Let me tell you all the things about it. Oh, listen to this. Oh, blah, 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 blah. For me, that's really effective, because when I hear something that I really love, it just gets me. I'm like, damn, I need to do this. I don't know why, but that's what happens for me. That's one possibility. Another could be demonstrating. It might be that I'm demonstrating a particular skill on a guitar or in music production or whatever. And in seeing the demonstration, the person feels like it's very exciting to see someone have some particular skill or ability level, and they really want to be like that as well. So seeing the demonstration could perhaps stoke the fire. Experiencing failure or success could both play into it massively. You know, asking the student to do things that I know are outside of their capability and knowing that they're going to fail, and then feeling that failure, even though they attempted to do it, could for a certain person be very motivating to be like, damn, I can't do this and I really want to, or it could be defeating, it depends. Succeeding could be the other way, you know, setting a goal that feels to them to be outside, but I know if they put themselves to it, they will get it. And the getting of it is the stoking of the fire. So you see, there's a whole lot of possibilities about it, but it all boils down to what stokes your fire. If you're someone listening to this now and you're someone who's interested in getting good as fast as possible, well, the way you're going to do that is making sure that your fire is as stoked as possible, and you'll need to learn what does that for you through experimenting. If you're with a teacher, hopefully they can help you with that. Otherwise, if you're by yourself, it's being attentive to what gives you that, makes your body vibrate, literally, makes your heart burn. You know, something's going to do that for you. The degree to which that's possible for you is not up to you. You know, it might be that you're someone who no matter what, that fire simply isn't going to burn that strong because it's just not that important to you. And if that's the case, that's fine. You might be someone that takes that tiniest little flick and bang, you're burst into flames and you just go, go, go. If you're that kind of person, you probably already know that. Although that might have been the case that it will begin that way tomorrow and it's been very dormant for a time and suddenly the volcano explodes tomorrow. That might happen too. The point though is that this inner flame, this inner desire is essential, completely essential to doing it, because the doing of it is the primary way of getting better at it. The doing of it in a way that's very attentive and focused and nuanced and passionate will get a person further in their instrument or music production or whatever it is than basically anything else. When that fire is really, really strong, like peak of what it can be for a person, they don't even really need a teacher. They will simply explore. And maybe that means they will find a teacher. Maybe that means they'll find books, or they'll just explore their instrument and write studies, or you know, who knows what. It could be anything. So there's a gradient, you know, of what's possible for any given person. And you can't make yourself into something you're not. Some people have this fire already burning seemingly from birth, it feels like. Other people, it's very slow, long burn. Other people, it never even comes. You know, they have no interest. A ton of people have no interest in learning music, or they say they have interest. Wouldn't it be nice if I wanted to, but I don't, right? So it's so unique to the individual. If I had to say a particular skill, though, that I would try to, you know, get the person to work on, it would be listening and ear training. And not even so much ear training as in terms of like identifying intervals and scale degrees and chords and all that, though of course I do feel that's very important, but more about deep listening to music, to their own music, to the music that they love, and a listening that is attentive to nuance and detail. Because what separates a great player from a good player is this. What's one of the things? How can you say, once again, say one thing and I immediately think, damn, I can't say that. But let's just say one of the main things that separates those two is this quality of listening, is this deep listening to every little detail. When you hear someone who's a master at it, everything is accounted for. Even when the playing feels very organic and flowing and not like academic and rigid, still there's the sense that all the little bits have been accounted for somehow, because that person knows when I go to play that bend or that chord or that sing that note, it's not a matter of simply singing the note. It's a matter of singing it like this in some very particular way. It's a matter of bending it like this, not like this. And all that subtlety comes through experience, but that experience is tempered by the listening, the attentive listening. So working with someone who really wants to develop quickly or deeply is a matter of burning fire and deep listening to the music they love and to themselves. I remember when I was younger playing guitar, at some point my parents said to me, I can't remember what the phrase was, but basically like you're playing all the right notes, but it kind of is like soulless. They didn't say soulless, but let's say that that's what they meant. And that sort of shifted my attention in a way to be like, right, it's not just about playing the notes. It's playing the notes, again, is just like an idea. I am playing the notes. Music is this flowing, morphing sound, and the whole point of playing the notes is to produce a pleasing, flowing, morphing sound. And so listening deeply and attentively to the actual sound quality that I'm producing, that is the tone, the clarity, the movement, the intonation, the whatever it happens to be, a million little factors. This plays hugely into what makes a person, instrumental player, sound pleasing to listen to versus someone who's technically very great, but you don't want to hear it. The same goes for music production. The same goes for any kind of artistic creation, even speaking, conversation, so on. So yeah, that's the answer there. Burning flame, deep listening, put them together. Genius. People will say you're a genius. All right, just a few personal questions here. The first one is, what is your main source of income? You once said you were an online composer. I'd love to hear more about that. Yeah, for a number of years, that was a big part of my income. It's not these days so much. I do composition gigs here and there, but it's something, my life just took a different path at a certain point. Certain opportunities appeared within music, and the way that has looked for the past 5 years or so is essentially, initially I was creating content for producers. That could be synth presets or loops and MIDI files and templates and all this, and then that moved into myself managing a team of people that do that. So I do less of it now myself, the actual work, and instead I'm managing a team of very talented, amazing people that play instruments and do production and whatever, and together we make this sort of content for various companies. And that's sort of the primary thing. Outside of that, it's been teaching. For a long time, teaching was also a huge part of my income. And that's not really the case now. Well, it is to a certain extent. My Udemy courses do make a significant portion of my income these days. I don't make any money off YouTube unless, YouTube funnels into someone buying my courses or, wanting to take lessons with me or something. I don't really offer lessons in an ongoing basis. I do offer one-on-one lessons to people who are sincerely interested and serious. We'll do some one-off lessons here and there. I can help people with direction or particular problems or whatever, but I don't so much do that as an ongoing thing on a weekly basis or whatever anymore. So yeah, it's been generally music production related content for producers and composers to use, writing that sort of stuff. I'm not selling it, some other company is selling it, but I'm doing the work for them. Next question is, what is your process for picking a challenge? If you don't know, I host a music production challenge every 2 weeks at the moment. It used to be every week on the YouTube channel, and you can find them all there. There's almost 100 of them of live streams that I've done. And so, yeah, I've had to pick a lot of those challenges. And a lot of the time, a big influence in that is what's burning for me personally at the moment. Like if I'm into a particular type of thing in music right then, I'm usually going to make a challenge that somehow incorporates that so that when I'm live making my own thing, I'm also learning and working on the thing that I want to be working on. Sounds pretty selfish, but I do find a way, I think, to make it open and applicable to everybody else in the community, and we can kind of explore the topic together. That being said, it's absolutely tempered against many other factors. One of them is, what have the past few challenges been? Like we might have done a theory challenge recently, like use a particular scale. We might have done a genre challenge recently, like synthwave. We might have done a off-the-wall weird challenge recently, like, I don't know, scoring a picture or I don't know what, something weird. And I say, okay, we've done those in the past weeks. What's something that contrasts those things so we're not kind of doing the same thing over again? In addition, obviously, I want the challenge to be pushing the boundaries for at least part of the community who's participating. It's hard to push it for everybody, of course, in every direction all the time, but somehow pushing someone's boundaries, making them do something that they wouldn't normally do, because that's the whole point. So I don't know, some combination of those things, taking suggestions from everybody else, something comes out, maybe it resonates with a lot of people, maybe it doesn't, you never know. It's just the way it goes. Next question was there any music you heard in your youth that made you want to start making music yourself? Yeah, of course. Must be that everybody hears music early on as their inspiration for making music themselves, I guess. And what would that be for me? Honestly, when I was first learning guitar, I learned piano when I was like 8 or something initially for a few years, and I was just learning classical music. And I listened to classical music, in fact, at the time, but I didn't have the sense that I want to compose that so much. I would still be at the piano and write little things, but it wasn't until I kind of heard like Led Zeppelin probably was the first band that I really got big into. And I started learning guitar, and I just wanted to learn literally every Led Zeppelin riff I could, and I did. I at some point I could probably play almost the entire Led Zeppelin discography, at least a part of every song, if not the whole song. And that was huge for me. It was just, I loved Jimmy Page guitar work, and that moved into so many other guitar players. And I was a lot motivated by pushing my own skills. Initially, there was the sense of, yeah, I like playing music and all that, but I also want to be good. I want to like impress my friends and whatever. That was a big part of it initially for me. That faded over time as I started to realize that there was more here than like show offness. There was more of a deeper love of music itself. So yeah, I honestly, as much as I want to say there was some like artist or band or something that early on made me want to like compose, I don't know really, honestly. I'd have to think about it some more. Film music was big for me, though I didn't really start composing film music. A lot of rock, metal. I was writing a lot of metal at the time. I just always wrote whatever I was into. I always wanted to create. I always wanted to create whatever it was that I was into. If I was into classic rock, what I was writing. Into folk, I was writing that. Into acoustic, into orchestral, into hip hop, I did a lot of that. Electronic music. Anything that was like piquing my interest, I had to start making that right away. I didn't really have some particular style I was falling back on. I was always moving, always changing to do whatever was up at the moment. It still goes that way today. If you're having a rough day, is there a track you can put on that helps you through whatever you're going through? No. That isn't really the way that I process emotion in my life, I don't think. Honestly, I don't have that many rough days. For whatever reason, I have a particular disposition in life that I just kind of, at least these days, I just flow with whatever happens. And there's not a lot that really gets to me, or I don't really have that many rough days. There will be more. There's been many earlier in my life, and I'm sure more rough days will come. But there's no music that I really turn to help me with that, I don't think. My way of being with hard times is more meditation and just allowing whatever needs to run through my system to run through. I think I had a lot of time in my early life. I had a lot of anxiety when I was young, like from the time I was, 10 or 12 or something till I was 19, 20, where I was having almost constant, all the time anxiety about various things in life, unknowns, and to the point of shaking, like really, and doctor visits and so many things. My parents will tell you all about it. And that all stopped when I stopped trying to control it and just let my body flow through whatever it needed to experience. So this anxiety would come up and I would just let it rip through me, basically. Let the whole shaking just go, not try to control it, not try to avoid it, not try to antidote it away. I would just experience it fully to the best of my ability. And that was kind of a revelation for me. And that proceeds to this day, still. Anything really that comes up in my life that is hard or emotionally taxing or anything, the instinctive response for me is one of just hands off, so to speak. Just let it happen. Let the intensity happen to me. And in doing that, there's a sense that like it does itself. I don't need to get in there and muck around with it and try to make myself feel different. I just let it happen, and then it will express itself to its fullest extent, and then it will dissipate. And that's kind of the way it works. Last question for the day. Would you like to learn more instruments? And if so, what would it be? Yeah, I want to learn them all. If I had to choose, though, I would have loved to spend more time on the drums. I absolutely love drums. I don't play them at all these days, except with my fingers, but I watch drummers all the time. And something about that primal, just going for it. No notes and scales and all that shit to think about. There's just this groove-based, like animalistic feeling. I wish I had spent a lot of time doing that. Otherwise, a melodic instrument would be really nice. Love to play saxophone or, what's it called? Clarinet, flute, anything that is like higher register and monophonic. Would be really into that. Harp, would love to have a big full harp. Damn, thought about that a lot. I'd love to play bass. I can play it, so it's not a new instrument. I can play it to whatever degree I can, but I'd love to be a great bass player. I just adore it. Those are the ones that come to mind, first of all. There's so many amazing instruments out there. What can you say? I would love to play them all, but drums have probably topped the list. And in a way, it's like the most different from everything else I do. There's no chords and all that. It's just this, and then some melodic instrument. Again, no chords and whatever, and more of a soaring, improvisational, on top of everything quality, which, yeah, you can do with the keyboard and you can do with the guitar to whatever extent, but I much prefer listening to solos that are played and melodies that are played on instruments that are expressly designed to do that, as opposed to harmonic instruments that can do that. I'm less attracted to the plink quality of guitars and all that when they're playing monophonically, pianos and harps and everything, where the note is an attack and then it dies. Ding! The continuously variable quality of saxophone, violin, flute, blah, 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 of air pressure, bow pressure. I honestly don't have much interest in playing stringed instruments, but same sort of quality there as in the wind instruments and air-based instruments. So yeah, that'll probably be what it is. If you made it to the end of this, hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know if you did in the comments. I'll continue doing these as long as people find they're interesting or funny or valuable or whatever. And if you have questions or topics you'd like me to talk about, please leave a comment right here on this video, or if you're not watching a video, you've got the audio version, just go to the Discord. You can find a link to that at my website, maxkonyi.com, or the direct website, sonic-sorcery.com. That'll take you to the Discord official website, And then you can go there and go to the Questions for Max channel and leave me a question or a topic there. And I'll include that in the November 2023 Q&A in a month from now. I enjoy doing them, and if people are into it, happy to do it. So hope you have a great rest of your day, and thanks for your support, and appreciate you. See ya.